Back. The race to see who will be the Democratic nominee to take on Republican Congresswoman Maria Elvira Salazar in District 27 is being closely watched. Last week, we spoke to Elliot Rodriguez, the former CBS newsman turned politician. This morning, we talked to his opponent, former prosecutor Robin Peguero. Robin, thank you for coming in. I want to start with, last week I had Elliot Rodriguez on, and I asked him why he didn't want to debate, and he seems to be more focused on Salazar than on you. You wanted to debate. Tell me what the issues are that you think differentiate you from Elliot Rodriguez.
Well, one of the biggest is that he won't speak about the issues. So his website has no issues page whatsoever. It doesn't mention Trump, not once. His launch video didn't mention Trump, not once. And I think what's important is that we have somebody who is different from Maria Elvira Salazar. We know that when we put up Republican Light or someone much like her, right, another newscaster with no public service experience, look what that got us 6 years ago, voters will just go with the real thing as opposed to the imitation. I'm completely different from Salazar. I stood up to the president as an investigator in the January 6th committee, and that's what we need, someone who's going to fight this administration, that's going to tell him that he's wrong, that's going to defend immigrants in this community. I also have a public service record to run on that Elliot does not. He has never done any public service in his life. He has no experience for this job, no qualifications for this job in particular. And that's a problem. That's a question mark. That's a risk for Democratic voters. You know exactly where I stand.
So talk a little bit about your background. So when you say that you're better suited for this position, what makes you better suited?
Well, so I've done public service my whole life. That started from when my parents came to this country, my father from the Dominican Republic, my mom from Ecuador, and they both decided to enlist in the U.S. Army. Separately, they had that thought. That's where they met. That's where they fell in love. I have chosen at every point, despite graduating from, going from Hialeah to Harvard College and Harvard Law School, to do public service and serve this community. And so I did that as a homicide prosecutor here in Miami for 7 years, helping protect this community. I did it as a staffer on Capitol Hill, working as a junior staffer, as a 21-year-old kid, making my way up all the way to chief of staff. I've done every single job in Congress but congressman, and chief of staff is basically the mini congressman. And I like to say I can be congressman on day one. I know where all the bathrooms are, but I also know how Congress functions, and I know how it doesn't function. And so with that public service record, you know what you get with me. You know where I'll be as a congressman. Elliot is a question mark, unfortunately, and we need someone who has a past record.
His primary argument is that he's better known in the community, and so therefore he has a better chance of beating Salazar. And let's face it, Salazar is sitting on more than $2 million in campaign funds. Neither you nor Elliot have actually done that great in terms of fundraising. You're well behind in terms of what Salazar will have for that race. So what makes you think you can beat Salazar in November?
But I'm way ahead of Elliot in terms of the money. I've raised over $1 million, and Elliot is at half of that.
Well, but he's only been in the race for a little over 3 months. You've been in for a year.
But that was exactly his argument, right? I'm this big force that everybody knows. I'm going to come in, I'm going to battle Salazar. He cannot raise a 40-year-old who is just a fresh face in politics, right? And it's because our message is resonating. It's because I've been working hard, and Elliot hasn't. Elliot feels it's a coronation, and he hasn't really been putting in the work. This is his first time at age 70 in his 8th decade to get into this arena. We need somebody who's a battle-tested candidate who has been there for the past year. And so, look, I am the best one to go up against Maria Elvira Salazar. I have the resources. You talked about name ID. Elliot is at 45% name ID. He was before any paid communications. I was at 28%. It's not that vastly different. Now I've been putting money into ads and mailers so that people can get to know me. Name ID is gone. The name ID advantage for Elliot Rodriguez.
What do you think the major issues in November will be in this race?
It has to be pocketbook issues. I am out there in the community. I'm talking to folks. And of course, middle class, working class people like me and like my family growing up are really struggling in this moment. And we have a Congresswoman who is voting to give tax buyouts and tax breaks to corporations and billionaires as opposed to helping us and doing it on the backs of middle class families and their health care. So we got to focus on getting rid of the Trump tariffs. We got to focus on giving tax relief to middle class, working class people. That's got to be our focus. And then immigration reform as well. People in this community are being deported. I go on way more Spanish language media than really my opponent Elliot. I'm doing that all the time, and I'm telling them the fact that this president has deported more Cuban Americans than any other president in the history of the United States.
Do you favor abolishing ICE?
No, I favor rerouting our resources from ICE, federal agents who are in our streets shooting down people, to the border. That's what it's supposed to be about, trying to stop the importation of drugs. And I favor, the reason we had to keep ICE is we got to deport violent criminals. I, as a homicide prosecutor, worked hard to make sure that people who injured people in our community were held to account, including their deportation if they didn't have the right papers. And so violent criminals absolutely have lost their privilege to be in this country. That does not mean that 90% of the folks who are being rounded up in the streets who have no criminal history should be deported and shouldn't be given a path to citizenship. They absolutely should.
Let's talk about health care. Obviously, this congressional district had the highest number of people who were signed up for the Affordable Care Act. The big, beautiful bill struck those tax subsidies for many people in the district. What do you want to do about health care in the district and across the country, for that matter?
In the short term, since January 1st, we've seen 93,000 people in our community in this district lose their health care. The people who got to stick with it saw their premiums double and triple. That makes no sense in the richest country in the world, so we got to extend those subsidies. But permanently, we have to have a public option to lower prices. That's more competition with private insurers. If they have a quality Cadillac plan that many people can afford, they got to put up an actual product that people will pay for, that's fine. And if they can't compete with the public option, then they'll have to reduce their prices in order to compete. And that's capitalism. And that's the way we're going to get to getting people universal care coverage.
So again, I just want to be clear. You would support a proposal for Medicare for all, what Bernie Sanders had long advocated.
Absolutely not. So Medicare for all is a single payer system. That's eliminating private insurance companies in this country. And actually, Elliot Rodriguez in our Miami Herald endorsement interview said that he supports Medicare for all. That's going to be played ad nauseum in the general election because it's socialized medicine. A public option means you can keep your private insurance, of course. There's just another option, a public option, so that people can buy into that if they want.
The issue of you talked about the tariffs and what Trump is doing. Let's actually back up a second. Let's talk a little bit more general about Donald Trump. What do you consider to be the greatest problem with the Trump presidency at this point?
I do think it's because he's not focused on middle class and working class people. That's what helped him get elected. He was talking about the economy. He was talking about how he's going to bring prices down on day one. And of course, prices are still sky high. And not only that, to add insult to injury, he's defunded our health care. So that has to be where we, focus. And as a congressperson, someone who has experience in Congress, I would have an economic impact statement for every single bill I propose. Because if it's not helping you keep your own damn money, then it's not worth us spending taxpayer dollars and debating it and voting on it.
One of the issues that Republicans are likely to use going into November is all of the candidates who are running as DSA, Democratic Socialists of America candidates, and the idea that the Democratic Party has been taken over by socialists. The president just refers to them blanketly as communists. In South Florida, those words, socialism, communism, evoke a very strong reaction. How do you deal with that, and what do you think of the wave of Democratic Socialists in New York, in Colorado, that we've seen winning elections and moving forward? Yeah,
they evoke the same feelings in me. I'm someone who grew up in Hialeah, hearing the horrible stories of people who suffered under communist regimes in Cuba, Venezuela, so on. I call myself a democratic capitalist. In fact, in the largest Spanish language newspaper in the world, El País, the headline is Democratic Capitalist Takes on Maria Elvira Salazar. And so, look, the Democratic Party is a big tent. We're right now a pro-democracy party. We're trying to hold together our institutions and our norms. I welcome everybody who wants to stand in opposition to this president and the horrible things he's doing in our community, because our Congresswoman is certainly giving him vote after vote after vote for free. But me, myself, and in this community, we know that an option, something like the public option, is a good capitalistic solution that allows folks to have more choices. Consumers have more ability to buy health care as opposed to limiting it to just the government.
Let's just take a step back for a second with the time that we have remaining. Why are you doing this? Why are you running? Why did you want to get into this race?
I have always really wanted to be fulfilled by my work. And when, as I mentioned, my parents enlisted in the Army, that story, that origin story of mine, really sat with me. And, much to their chagrin, as I mentioned, I worked really hard. I went to public schools in Hialeah. I graduated #1 in my class, and I was able to work my way, because I had to work through Harvard College and Harvard Law School. And at every point, my colleagues went off to make a good amount of money. After college, either in finance or iBanking, and after law school, certainly, I was on the Harvard Law Review. Most of my colleagues went off to make upwards of 6 figures at a law firm. For me, after college, I went to DC to work in the Congress, making $24,000 a year. And then after law school, I came back here to Miami, making $40,000 a year to be a prosecutor. I have always cared about serving this community. That's what I want to continue to do. And I think that when you are applying for a job, you should be qualified for it. You should have actual experience. You wouldn't look at a resume in a different field and say, oh, you can have this job. You know, I can't do what you do. I don't have the experience to be a newscaster or a journalist. And so I think if you want to give someone a promotion of this magnitude, it's very serious to be in Congress. And at this moment, it's very serious. Give it to somebody who knows what they're doing.
Robin Peguero, thank you very much for your time.